Hello, YouTube. Hello, real tennis coaches. And hello, Periscope at Kids Play Tennis. That battery right there is probably going to go dead right there on my iPod. So you people watching on Periscope, it could cut out at any second. So apologies, but no apologies. Sorry, not sorry. Hey, so first off, I want to start out with a shout out to the great Bill Bradley in Fresno, California, who runs the largest high school tennis tournament in the nation. And it's something else. It's really awesome. They get something like 110 teams, something like that. And they break them down into divisions. And they have like, some divisions have 16 teams and you play 4 matches over 2 days. And it's awesome. It's just great. Love that experience. Bill does a great job every year. Been having some problems. They had a fire down there, and that was a problem because the air was a problem. But anyway, I think they even take teams from other states too. I know some teams from Hawaii have come over. It's a lot of NorCal and Southern Cal teams coming together. Really an awesome experience. So check it out. But and then, if you're a high school coach or you would like to help influence high school tennis, consider creating an invitational tennis tournament in your area and bring teams together from different leagues. There are a lot of formats that work, and you don't need a lot of teams. I mean, you could have a 4-team tournament easily. I've had 5, 7-team tournaments. I mean, it seems like an odd number, but if you need help with something like that, I'm glad to help you. Anyway, today, though, the topic is setting the tone. And, I'm kind of riffing off of, I'm going to kind of go a little more stream of consciousness here because I was thinking a little bit about what were the origins of me learning how to set the tone. The blog's coming out at 11:30. And, it's pretty tennis coaching specific, but I kind of wanted to give the background because, some of you are aware that I used to be an inner city school teacher. And one thing that's very interesting to me is our lovely science of throwing rookie teachers into classes with the worst kids. Because the veteran teachers are too busy working with the best kids. So I always thought that was kind of curious. So wow, somebody on wow, I'm getting some rude comments on my Periscope. Anyway, I'm going to ignore you because I really don't care what you think. Anyway, so kind of amazing. So anyway, my first day of class, I come in. And, everybody's got their assignment, and I go to the chalkboard, and we still had chalk back in those days. And I write something on the board, and something is being thrown at me, and it hits off the board. And I'm like, oh, and I turn around, shock and dismay. I'm like, look, I didn't sign up for Blackboard Jungle here. I'm not Sidney Poitier. I'm so sorry, So I was very curious though. So I turn around and I look, at these kids, and I'm like, well, that's not going to happen again. I mean, first I wanted to make sure that they knew that I wasn't intimidated by them. Because that's in a situation like that, that's what they're trying to accomplish. They're trying to get you on your heels. And they'd already made, I think it was 7 different long-term substitute teachers had quit. They made their teacher resign. They made her crazy. And then they had 6 or 7 other long-term substitutes. And then I come in for the second semester, and I made it all the way through. Well, anyway, so I turn back around and I start writing again. And sure enough, something comes flying off the board. So I was like, I thought about it for a second. And I'm like, as a tennis player, I'm able to triangulate, trajectories and all that. So I turn around and I go, you. And I point, because it is hilarious, because there's this guy and all around him were girls. He's right in the middle. And I'm like, I know a girl didn't throw something at me. Is that sexist to say that? That I doubt that a girl is going to throw something at the teacher on the first day? Probably not. Okay, so anyway, I went, you, right? He's like, whoa, he gives me the whole, innocent act. Anyway, long story short, sent him out, dealt with it. All the kids in the class were mad at me. As class let out, the one kid in the corner, the Hawaiian kid in the corner, waited for a second before he poked his head back in the class, and he went to indicate that I had gotten my man. So anyway, restoring human behavior to that classroom was a real bear. It was really tough. And when we as coaches enter a situation where there's been chaos before, that's the toughest time to set the tone. And anytime we're going to execute some kind of cultural shift in how we do things, then there's going to be some pushback. I mean, it's a very interesting dynamic. So, how to set the tone? I mean, and then here's another interesting thing that plays into this. As a rookie teacher, I realized that I had good days and bad days, and that there would be days that everybody would act reasonably, and then there'd be days that they would act almost completely insane, and I wasn't completely in control. And while mentally I assented to the idea that kids should behave in the classroom, and that it was my job to see that that happened, the problems continued. And then all of a sudden it hit me. It really struck me really all at once. And I don't remember what caused this epiphany, but maybe somebody taught me about this. I don't know. But there came a time where I realized that the mental assent that I had towards what was expected to happen in the classroom was different than my own deep-seated conviction about what I expected to have happen. So, I didn't really expect them to behave any better than they had. So once I put those two together, then, it gave me what I needed, So setting the tone starts with you, the coach. It starts with me. It starts with having deep-seated principles, that are rock solid. And now, flashback. I mean, because when we started this, when I started the blog marathon, which I started as a challenge by somebody who's like a content marketer person. I think I'm blanking out here on Facebook for a second. So let me wait for that to reconnect. See what's going on there. Maybe I can go to a different connection. So bear with me a second. Oh, I'm back on Facebook. So hey, in the comments, did I go away for a minute? Did I stop? What happened? My Facebook Live said it had to reconnect. So let me know what that experience is like for you on your end. I have no idea. So, all right. So it comes down to, so the challenge was to go live every day for a period of time. I think it was like a month. And part of it is to get more comfortable in front of the camera, and then also to kind of hone the skills of presenting, like this. So, if you have any comments, I'd love to see your comments, questions, or whatever. All right. but that conviction, and that's okay. So back to the very beginning of the blog marathon, started with the article on why you don't need a coaching philosophy. And you know, was interesting because it got a lot of attention because I framed it that way, and I think people were looking for some kind of affirmation that that was actually true. And then the article is actually a gotcha. It's a no, actually you do. I mean, come on now. So, and this is very interesting to me because without a well-defined coaching philosophy, then it's very difficult to have the conviction to make certain things happen. So, you know, it's vital. It's really vital to your mission. I mean, if you really want to be as effective as you possibly can be, then start with that. Sterling and I both noticed that as we would post stuff on YouTube here, that that people would look at our stroke instruction stuff, and people would look at our drills, and they would look at our footwork stuff. But the stuff that was previous and the beginning of, you know, how to coach, they would just gloss right over that. Nobody really, no, I shouldn't say nobody, but a much smaller percentage of coaches actually want to do the work of developing a coaching philosophy. And that's a shame, right? Because, you know, you can have all the stroke technical knowledge, you know, in the world, but if you don't know how to create a learning environment for your students, then a lot of efficiency is lost that way. You know, you can know all the drills, you can know this and that, but if you can't get the players from point A to point B and get them, you know, situated, then, you know, what's going to happen there? So, you know, so now when it comes to the actual practical, let's say first time, you know, you're meeting kids. I mean, there's kind of the global issue of, you know, an entire school year or a summer program or a, you know, clinic section or whatever, you know. I set the tone immediately when I'm meeting brand new people to say, all right, here's what is expected. You know, I am going to show you the utmost respect. And so as a result, I expect that to be mutual. So there will be mutual respect that happens here. So now if you ever feel like I have disrespected you in any way, then you let me know. We will talk about that. Okay. And, you know, I expect now because of that I'm only going to get the utmost respect. So you can call me Bill, but you have to use my name with the utmost respect, or I might actually force you to start calling me Coach after that. That's with private program stuff. With high school team stuff, I'm always just Coach. That's it. Nobody calls me by my first name. This is a little bit extreme, but this is inner city high school stuff, right? One thing I learned to do in my third year of teaching, I'd been teaching for 3 years, and I was starting to get a lot better about controlling my classroom, but it would take some time. So I got a lot better at the first day of school. And so what would happen is I would stand outside the classroom next to the door. People would enter, the students would enter, and I would say, welcome to my classroom. Come on in my classroom. And then they would come in, and then I had already put them on notice that this is my space here, and you are a welcome guest in my learning environment here. And with our programs, I mean, I think it should be very clear. Once you enter that gate, everything is about what we're doing here. On the other hand, you need some sanctioned time where kids can socialize to some degree. I mean, you don't want to completely rob the joy of you know, the friendships that they're going to have on court, but that should be also a structured thing. I mean, I give it 5 minutes at times. Sometimes we'll take a really quick water break. Sometimes we'll take a full 5. You know, and in that 5 minutes, maybe I have no plan to talk to them at all. I mean, I'll talk to them shortly after their 5, so they can have 5 dedicated minutes of chit-chatting about whatever. I also reserve the right to extend that. Sometimes you see just an incredible time of, wow, there's a really substantial conversation happening with these kids and they're really bonding and this is a team building experience. So I might say, hey, you know, 5-minute break's over, but I'm going to give you 2 more minutes because it seems like everybody's having a good time. So you got 2 more minutes, wrap it up, and then we're going to get going. So it's kind of the yin and yang of control. I mean, you can't be over controlling either. You know, the other thing that what I'll do is that once I've got everybody seated in my classroom, you know, then basically I talk and I walk throughout the entire room and I stand pretty close to people and I just establish the fact that this is the way it's going to go in here. I can be anywhere I want. When teachers only stand at the front or they only sit behind their desk, then you got a problem because then they don't feel free in their own classroom to go wherever they want. So you have to establish that is that, hey, I'm the coach, I'm fearless and powerful, and I will say whatever I feel like needs to be said, and then it's up to you whether you like it or not, you know, and whether you want to talk about that. So anyway, these are different ways to set the tone, but it all starts with that real deep conviction of what do you really expect to have happen. Let me take a look at the blog that's coming out today. So, you know, there isn't much talk about this. You don't get this. You don't get this stuff at a workshop, really. Nobody, I haven't heard it myself. I don't remember it. You know, I think another way that we set the tone is by getting into fundamentals. You know, it's you know, there's kind of an expectation that, you know, by and large, most players are going to really play with a lot of fundamentally sound strokes and strategies and whatnot. And it takes a little time. It's a little annoying to go through that process. Oh, John, I see you. Yeah, so learning and environment, and yeah, we create the environment, exactly. So John, being a school teacher, knows exactly about that. You know, another thing is to establish, affirm, and defend basic realistic goals, you know, because teenagers tend to be a little unrealistic, and that's okay. I mean, it's part of their natural learning. I mean, to me, a really fully healthy and mature young person is going to become pretty realistic by the time they're 16. If they're not, then they're a little bit behind the curve. The outstanding kids, you know, are the ones who have a really realistic view of what needs to be done before they're 14. If we backtrack a little bit, I found an interesting study on kids who are at risk. So it's about at risk, you know, severe at risk, slightly at risk, and then totally healthy up at the top. And an interesting thing, they said that in general, kids who are age 4 to 10, who have a dreamy vision about how they can be the best in the world at something, they have some grandiose dream, that's healthy. And the time for realism hasn't come yet, because that dreaming is part of what helps sets their upper limit of where they're going to go. Then sometime around age 11, you know, and sometimes earlier, sometimes later. I mean, it all kind of kicks in differently based on how their brains work. That it kicks in, the social comparison begins to kick in, and that's why we have middle school at age 11, because because kids start to look around, they start to go, oh wow, you know, Johnny's better than me, and I'm better than Steve, and let's see, okay, I have to, you know, I'm gonna have to beat Johnny and everybody like Johnny if I want to get where I'm going. So age 11, they start to wake up to the amount of competition that's there. So so that's when you can kind of start talking about, all right, well, it takes some work. You know, you're going to have to do something to overcome, right? Even so, they're going to be holding on to that dream. I mean, and you want to keep the dream alive, really. Now, the next level down are kids who are realistic when they're 4 to 10, and you know, parents believe that they're doing a good thing by telling their kids, you know, that it takes hard work and you have to be realistic, you know, in between the ages of 4 to 10. And they already start kind of hassling them about being committed enough and working hard enough. And I'm like, you know what? Your kid's at risk already. You know, you know, you can do a lot and keep it fun. They can be on the court a lot and go, hey, let's go have some fun playing tennis, you know, and don't even, why use the word work? Who wants to go to work before they're 10? Give me a break. All right. So those kids that are realistic before age 11 are already at risk because they've already been programmed to be realistic, and then they get to age 11 where the real social comparison kicks in and they realize they're behind, and that is not a good thing. Okay, so so from there, then you kind of have to repair some stuff. I mean, there's some damage been done already, and some kids are just naturally wired to be more realistic themselves. So you can't, I don't know that you can inoculate them from it. Now, the other thing is that the next level down is that kids who are already pessimistic by the time between the ages of 4 and 10, they have doubts about what their ceiling is, how good they can be. Or they believe that there's some bad outcomes that can happen. They are seriously at risk, and there will need to, you know, the study that I was looking at seemed to indicate, and it was a pretty lengthy case study, seemed to indicate that some type of intervention would be necessary, some type of very serious, you know, programmed intervention by family and friends, and you know, maybe even some professional help to help kind of redirect the thinking, you know, and you know, that's pretty sad. And then, you know, you put on top of that a parent who reinforces those things, and you know, yeah, good luck with that. That's you know, and that explains a lot of the current ills in society come from these things, people trying to be realistic or you know, becoming pessimistic too early in life. You know, I mean, if I can give my opinion for a second on that, I mean, I believe that there's still so many incredible opportunities that people are unaware of just because they're blinded in their minds to what the possibilities are. I mean, any person in this country, if they decided that they wanted to get all the education that would get them through, it's there to be had, and it's there to be had for free. So, you know, there are really no excuses. Anybody want to argue with me on that? Yeah, well, let's take that offline. I will gladly have that conversation with you, because you know, I think I've got some eye-opening information there. Recently talking to somebody about a college that is already completely free. There's a university that is completely free, and I don't know how that works, but everybody who goes there, I think, has, you know, is obligated to work at the school. You know, and so that's an interesting thing. I mean, they put them to work and they help build the organization, and I think that's incredible. That's a great model. All right, so let me go back to the blog here for a second, and then my computer says it wants to install something, but one of the other users of this computer doesn't seem to want to cooperate with that. All right. Embrace and mitigate chaos. All right. Now, we might want to set the tone and have absolute control, but good luck with that. There is going to be a problem. And every once in a while, we will be the problem. I will be the problem. You will be the problem. I mean, every once in a while, I do not set a good tone. I come in and I start goofing off a little too early. Maybe I tell a joke before we've actually gotten to work, and then everybody's going berserk. And oh man, and I just go, all right, everybody stop. Come on over here. Come to the net here. I'm sorry. All right. I set a bad tone here, and I'm going to get serious, and I want all of you to recover quickly. Otherwise, this is going to be a wasted time. It's not. We're not going to get the most out of it. So please forgive me. And I don't relish that, and I don't relish telling you about that, but it happens. So it would also be really unrealistic for me to try to portray myself as being like 100% perfect on that. And, you know, I'm lording it over you and telling you, making you feel like, oh, you're not perfect yet like me. And wow, that'll be the day. So a lot of you already know that, you know, all these things to be true. So it's sometimes because of what's going on, we need to reaffirm the tone. We need to set the tone and reset it and refine it and reaffirm it. You know, things happen. I mean, I remember on the morning of 9/11, right? I got to school, and, you know, while I was driving to school, my wife called me and told me that some airplanes had hit, you know, a building in New York City. And I was like, why are you telling me this? I mean, that's horrible. I'm sorry, you know, but I don't know why you're telling me this, because you never call me with news. And then I was like, that's really terrible. It's a terrible thing. You know, I had no idea anything beyond an airplane hit a building. Okay. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, I think a baseball player had actually hit a building, and he and his friend died, you know, a couple of years before that. But anyway, so get in this classroom, you know, announcement comes over, teachers, turn on your TV, you know, and then there it is, you know. And I don't remember if we witnessed the second airplane. But then that led to, so essentially, I mean, that really changed the tone of everything for days. I mean, we didn't learn any math that day, none at all. And we did a lot of talking with the kids about, you know, trying to figure out what's going on, you know, national crisis. I mean, and then you get, you know, you get local and civic crises. You know, I mean, things happen in your neighborhood that have to be talked out. I mean, somebody could have a tragedy, you know, in their family, and then, you know, it affects everybody. So, you know, things happen large and small that need to be addressed or not. I mean, and you have to use your best judgment and kind of collaborate with the kids. So in dealing with that, there has to be a certain level of collaboration with the players, because if you just go about doing your thing and you're not sensitive to what's happening around you with your players, then they can be lost. you know. So, all right. So when we communicate our expectations, you remember that, you know, we're the author of that. You know, I'm the author of my program. You're the author of your program. You know, I have, you know, so if, like, for instance, one thing about setting the tone would be like, how do you do your tryouts for your team? Okay. So if you're a team coach, if you're not a team coach, then, you know, you might have some kind of selection criteria for joining a program, right? So, you know, what is your selection criteria and how well is it communicated, right? Here's one breakdown that, you know, it's not perfect. You know, I was kind of spitballing this one and just kind of threw it out there, but, you know, I knew I had a problem at this one school where I had some kids that were, that lacked integrity and, you know, had some interesting attitudes about things that really mattered to me. And so I knew that I couldn't have the results only be on tryouts. So anyway, so one year I made sure that I let everybody know that the results of the tryout matches would count for 50%, right? And, you know, anywhere from 50 to 75% still gives you some room to have other factors that are deciders between, you know, two players. So then 25% is attitude and work ethic. And, you know, you can observe these things. I mean, you can see who moves quickly to the next thing and who seems like they're ready to go, and who gives you the, do we have to, you know, or the eye roll, or, you know, their body language tips them off about how ready to work they are. So attitude and work ethic, 25%. Integrity and whether they're a team player, 15%. And then there's raw athletic ability, because, you know, some players might not be winning right now today, but they have, you know, they have a lot more upside. You know, then there are other things about like balancing your classes, because, you know, a lot of coaches get in this trap of ending up with, you know, 12 seniors on their team. And then, you know, that's a recipe for disaster, because they have no balance throughout their team, and they have some fairly low achieving seniors that are really not contributing to the program. I don't know. There has to be a balance there. I mean, some programs are really a lot more about participation. If you have a very competitive program, then I'm sorry, that number 12 senior, you know, they might not need to be there. So I've actually done a thing where I said, all right, if you're outside the top 12 as a senior, then goodbye. If you're outside the top 20 as a junior, you know, same thing. Now, and then so that I can keep more freshmen, you know, you need to have freshmen, you need to have sophomores, so that you have this balance going through. Because unfortunately, on a very competitive team, those seniors are taking away good competitive opportunities from younger players. You know, flip that on its head and go completely the other way. I mean, it's up to you. It's your team. You decide what you're going to do. I mean, I've had so many teams where I take everybody and there are no cuts at all. And, you know, I'll allow seniors to be on the team who have no possible shot of ever playing a varsity match, but they get to hang out with the team, and there's plenty of room for them, and they make a contribution to practice. So why not? I mean, so, you know, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you have to do this, but if you're in a situation where you're selecting, then set the tone with very clear criteria about what you're expecting. So, you know, that's a very important consideration. All right, so now and it takes some courage to cut somebody who seems like they might be good enough. Oh man, I had a player who lied to me, and he was a decent player, but when I was first getting to know the kids and I was asking around, hey, what position did you play last year, and all that, this kid told me that he'd been a varsity player, and then the assistant coach comes up to me and says, no, he was never varsity. He was actually kind of a middle of the road JV player, and he skipped practice a lot. And then when he kept asking to challenge up onto the varsity, and the coach, you know, gave him one shot, he got blown out, and he didn't get another shot. Then he quit the team. So I see that kid again. I was like, hey, you know, you told me you were varsity, you know, but the assistant coach from last year is telling me that you were JV, and you know. So he maintains what he was saying to me, and I'm like, no, well, this doesn't add up. So after he kind of fleshes out his whole reaffirming his lie to me, then I called my assistant coach over, and we all talked about it together. And you know, I pretty much cut him on the spot, because I mean, and then we brought, you know, he was also trying to convince my assistant coach to also corroborate his story, even though it was false. I mean, then you start to realize that, hey, maybe this kid's got a problem mentally and needs to deal with that. So, you know, we had to call in people who knew him well into our little meeting, and then yeah, he was gone. He left, and he was wasn't very happy, right? And I had some. It was interesting because I got some pushback from some of the players. They were like, "Hey, he was good, and what happened there?" And wow, that, you know. And even to this day, it's funny. I saw one of my players, and now he's like 26 years old, and he was on that team, and he was like, "Hey, what was that? Why did you do that?" And he never knew. But you know, that this is a luxury we don't have. We don't have the luxury to explain everything all the time. So I had now this is another thing on the flip side. So I mean, it all made almost make it sound like I have no standards, but this was remarkable. So I cut down to 24 kids, because 24 on 6 courts was just going to be perfect. You know, 4 kids per court. We can play singles and doubles. All sorts of great things can happen there. You know, you start getting 6 on a court, you know, it gets pretty crowded. People can't really hit the ball. They don't have enough room to move. There's a little bit of a danger thing getting in there. So I cut down to 24, and then the next day, the kid who was my final cut comes back to practice. And I was kind of like, wait, what's he doing here? And then I went to my assistant coach. I was like, didn't I cut him yesterday? And I knew I did, but he shows up, and I look at him, and he's kind of got this. He has this interesting look on his face. He has this look on his face like nobody's gonna tell me no. And so I go up to him like, didn't I cut you yesterday? And he didn't say anything. He just stood there. I was like, oh, what am I going to do here? I mean, this is crazy, right? And that takes a lot of guts, you know. I was like, this is kind of amazing. Who does that? Who comes back to the team after the coach cuts them to practice? And I'm like, okay, so get in here. I mean, it really blew my mind, because what an incredible trait to have, that amount of determination that you would put yourself through embarrassment, humiliation, possibly. So he came back, and then a funny thing happened. He started to beat people, and he moved up the ladder, and he was somebody who didn't have like great strokes, or, you know, he didn't have classic strokes by any stretch of the imagination, but he was a winner. he knew how to win matches, and he always found a way. And so that rewarded me for keeping him back on the team. You know, that was pretty good. So anyway, so a couple more little topics that you'll see in the blog when it comes out at 11:30 is to plan the work, communicate the plan, work the plan. So, you know, plan the work the plan, that's fine, but you also have to communicate the plan to some degree. I mean, hey, everybody, this is what we're going to do today. You know, we're going to spend so much time on this, so much time on that, so much time on that. And sometimes you have to be able to adjust on the fly. But setting that tone, giving an outline of what's on the plate today helps players to move quickly from one thing to the next. Okay, now it's time when we're going to do that serving drill I was talking about, and now we're going to do serves and returns, and then now, you know, so, and then, you know, coming up is our spider runs. So, and then finally, then, you know, Sterling and I are available for a 20-minute consultation phone call to help you work out how to set the tone with your group. You know, maybe you have some problems with people who sort of wreck the tone or try to change the tone on you. We can get into how to deal with that. And, you know, if you're interested in your coaching team tennis, I would highly recommend The Art of Coaching High School Tennis, which I wrote in 2014 and then published a second edition in 2015. Probably there will be another book that comes out in the next couple of years that will just be stories of things that happen in high school tennis that you can learn from. So it's 88 short little chapters. So you can read one chapter in 3 to 5 minutes, and then that's your kind of like your nugget for the day, and then move on. And then when you have time to read it a little bit more, you could probably read 2 or 3 chapters, and then, you know, you complete something. So highly recommend it. Right now it's 4.7 stars on Amazon. And if you are enjoying these, you know, I would welcome you to get the 20-minute consultation phone call. If you want more in-depth coaching, you can take a full 2-hour coaching intake call. All right. But then there'll be a little bit of a sales pitch that comes with that. And then also then there's like an obligation to send referrals. So that's my expectation on that for you using 2 hours of my time. But people who've done the 2 hours are usually pretty amazed at what happens there. And yes, I do give it my all. And yes, it is possible to talk for 2 full hours. And it's really all about what you want. What do you want to achieve? So anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. And go out and set a great tone today in every moment, right? Don't try not to goof off like me. All right, so who should I say goodbye to first? I think I'm going to say goodbye to Periscope. Swipe down to stop camera. Oh, darn it. Clear that. Boom. All right. Goodbye, Facebook. And goodbye, YouTube.